Hello again, everybody. It's Scott Casper. Takedown Wrestling. Our coverage of the sport continues. This time we head to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where we find in the Nike hot seat Chuck Harman, one of the founders of the International Fraternity of Wrestlers. Chuck, how are you?
Very good, Scott. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. In brief, if you could, give us a rundown on what the International Fraternity of Wrestlers is and what it's doing.
Well, the International Fraternity of Wrestlers is a fee-based membership organization, and what we offer to our members, just like any other major organization like the National Organization of Realtors or the PGA of America or AAA, is consolidating the purchasing power of all those wrestlers out there and leveraging that into the marketplace to get some good deals on everyday purchases. Things like 20 to 60% off of maybe prescriptions or travel deals and things along those lines. In addition to that, our mission is really to reach out into the general populace and find the over 11 million wrestlers that are between the ages of 25 and 65 that are out there that once they hung up their wrestling shoes, they haven't seen a wrestling match, haven't been back to a wrestling match. And what we really want to do is reconnect them back to the sport. Because every time we talk to them, they light up like a Christmas tree and they tell us their war stories and they tell us, you know, how wonderful it was to be a wrestler. And, we bring back some really fond memories, some memories they cry about, some memories they laugh about. But no matter what it is, whether they were 1 and 12 or 12 and 1 in their high school or college career, they have fond memories of wrestling. And we want to reconnect them back to the sport.
You've been able to put together quite a list of former wrestlers, coaches, officials, etc. But this truly is a fraternity, and you're estimating the number of what we call passive non-wrestlers or former wrestlers, passive or non-officials or coaches. That number to be what, about 11 million?
In the United States alone, it's over 11 million, and we've done some research that actually verifies that number. Our number's actually coming out a little higher than that, but specifically age group wise, between 25 and 65, there are well over 11 million former men and some women too that have wrestled.
And our sport has not necessarily done a great job of keeping them enjoined or keeping them active in our sport. We can do a better job, right?
Well, there's never been a platform, a social platform that says, let's stay connected and there's a benefit to being connected. So that's why we created the International Fraternity of Wrestlers. And it truly is a fraternal type organization, both male and female, like fraternal twins. So it's not exclusively a male organization. It just happens between the age of 25 and 65. There's just a very small group of women that have participated in the sport.
And that number, though, is growing, and we're seeing some of the activity, and we'll be seeing it together in Las Vegas at the World Championships as they come back to the shores of the United States. A special opportunity indeed. It's closing in on a sold-out show. 35th anniversary of the 1980 Olympic boycott, the team that did not get to wrestle. I'm going to call you coach from time to time, Chuck, but we get an opportunity to salute them at a very special event.
Well, we're actually going to honor the 1980 Olympic wrestling team at the Gold Coast Hotel and Casino on September 11th, between 4 and 6, with a dinner, and we're going to induct each one of them into the International Fraternity of Wrestlers as a lifetime member.
Mm. Now, this event is sponsored by, is it Bosch Solutions?
It's Bosch Solutions. Bosch has been involved with wrestling for a few years. If you go to Jordan Burroughs' website, Bosch is actually the creator of that website and hosts that for Jordan Burroughs.
Oh, very cool. All right. You have some guest speakers, also coincidentally authors of the book Boycott, Stolen Dreams and the 1980 Moscow Olympic Games. Can you tell us about the speakers?
Well, Tom and Jerry went around, and I'm not going to attempt their last name because I mess it up every time. But Tom and Jerry have actually gone around and interviewed, I believe it's 27 or 28 of the individuals from all the different Olympic teams, U.S. Olympic teams, during the 1980s, and basically have chronicled their story in their book called Boycott, Stolen Dreams of the 1980 Moscow Olympics.
I like it. So chronicling the words of those athletes from their mouth to the screen, and in this case, to the authors of the book, Boycott Stolen Dreams of the 1980 Moscow Olympic Games. You can support the event, folks, even now. It's not too late because I'll tell you what, this is a growing organization and they want you to be a member of it. It's ifwrestlers.org. ifwrestlers.org. I was pleased to be there at the founding of this organization, and a lot of good people, including Wade Chalice. Wade will be hosting as a master of ceremonies this event, something he's grown pretty good at. I'm kind of excited to hear Wade MC this event.
Well, Wade began his career, I think, with the Gable roast for the Hall of Fame, the Wrestling Hall of Fame, and since then, I think he's been involved in 3 or 4 different events where he was the master of ceremonies. And just give you a little behind the scenes, I probably talk to Wade maybe 3 or 4 times a week right now with him, making sure he has all his facts right about all the athletes and how he's going to conduct this. And what's going to be unique about this is we have some coaches from that era that you may recognize, like Dan Gable was the freestyle coach, and Wayne Baldwin was the Greco coach. And they have some pretty stellar past themselves.
Yes, they do. They do indeed. America needs wrestling stars as well. It's been a while since we've had a real recognizable star. Sure, you can count Cale Sanderson in that group, but once he got back into coaching, it kind of disappeared from the promotion of the sport front. Last big name that I can recall as far as somebody that's actively out there promoting the sport would be Dan Gable. Would you say that's true?
I would. Probably one of the reasons why wrestling hasn't been able to grow stars or heroes in the general public is because there really hasn't been a structure in place to engage the media with their story. And that's one of the tasks or one of the goals that we have at the International Fraternity of Wrestlers is actually to be the media company or the marketing company for wrestling. Not high school wrestling, not college wrestling, not freestyle wrestling, wrestling in general, because there are just so many good qualities that come out of a person when they go out and wrestle.
Chuck Harman, one of the driving people behind the International Fraternity of Wrestlers. Perhaps you've heard about it. We invite you to check it out online, ifwrestlers.org. It says right on the website you're cordially invited to this special event, but I know for a fact it's sold out now, isn't it?
It is. We have 210 people that are guests. We can pack in a few more at the door. We've left just a little bit of room. But I got to tell you that once people knew that we would be honoring, Lee Kemp and Chris Campbell and Gene Mills, and on the Greco side, guys like Greg Wojciechowski and Dan Chandler. These are all they're members of that 1980 team, and we're celebrating their accomplishments. This isn't about the boycott. This is about them as individuals and how they've overcome, a very devastating event in their life. One of the stories you're going to hear is, one of the athletes mortgaged his house so that he could compete in the 1980 Olympics, and then it basically pulled out from underneath him. And, he went on to have a very good career after that.
Each one of the athletes, I believe, is sponsored. I know we're sponsoring an athlete in recognition, and that's Tom Minkle, the head coach at Michigan State. But are all the athletes at this point, are all the athletes taken?
They are. We had UFC stepped up and sponsored Jeff Blatnick. Number of different organizations. One of the goals of this event too was to try to bring some outside organizations involved too. We have an organization called Fit First Responders that picked up and sponsored an athlete as well. I think it was Brad Redkins that they sponsored. But what's really important about this event is that these guys in the 1980 Olympic wrestling team, when we did a search on the internet, we virtually couldn't find out anything about them. Wow. And so when Al and I talked about this, we said we really wanted this to be a historical documentation of what happened and who they were. We don't want them to just be forgotten.
And it's not a political event. You said it's not about the politics of the 1980s. It's not about President Carter and the decision that was made. It is about saluting them and the people that they are today. Let's talk a little bit about who they are. Rick Tucci, Jerry Wagner, two referees that'll be saluted. Team coaches include Dan Gable, Bobby Douglas, Bill Wick, Tadaki Hata, Lee Allen, Stan Dezick, and Wayne Baughman. Greco-Roman team members, neat team of guys: Mark Fuller, Bruce Thompson, Brian Gust, Dan Mello, Tom Minkle, John Matthews, Dan Chandler, Mark Johnson, Brad Rangens, and Jeff Blatnick, the late Jeff Blatnick. Freestyle team members include Bobby Weaver, Gene Mills, Johnny Azevedo, Randy Lewis, Chuck Yegla, Leroy Kemp, Chris Campbell, Ben Peterson, Russ Hellickson, and Greg Wojciechowski. What's painfully obvious to me, this is a group of people that have had a thumbprint in one way or another on the sport since before the 1980s. And here it is some 35 years later, and we get the opportunity to thank them and to hear the stories. It's pretty unique, isn't it?
It's very unique, and it was a different time back then too. And we want people to know that this is before USA Wrestling. These members actually had to go through a process with the AAU to qualify to be in the Olympics. There was no regional training centers. There were no large sponsors. These guys to train, sometimes they would just call up a friend or a couple of friends and said, "Hey, can I stay at your place? You know, I'd like to work out for a week." And that was the time. Now, we're not going to get away from the boycott completely because it is a historical event that caused this to happen. But the reality of what we're trying to do is not to focus on that, but to focus on these as individuals. And there's some huge, great stories that have come out of this group of people.
And you know, perhaps one of the greatest stories is the leader that President Carter became, even in this wake of I think, a bad decision by President Carter at the time. I'm sure he thought it was good. What an ambassador for the United States. I think a much better ambassador perhaps than president, but a truly great ambassador for the States, now suffering from cancer down in Georgia. It would have been neat. I understand you made an invitation to President Carter to be there.
We did, and it was before we found out that he had cancer. And we are talking to the Carter Library and his media people, and there's a possibility that we could even get a video from him. But you're right. He made a decision based on the information that he had. And one of the things I think we forget about with him making that decision, and he says it only a couple times in different speeches, but he was really concerned about the welfare and the safety of the athletes, not just to use it as a political tool. And we were in a time of political upheaval. There was a lot of uncertainty in the world at that time.
Be that as it may, it left most of the 1980 team frustrated and without their place in Olympic history. One of the individuals we are saluting actually had his house mortgaged heavily, and with hopes of being able to compete and do well and represent his country, come back and make his living however he made it. But after his Olympic struggles and trials, did not get to do it. This is a really neat opportunity. What's next for the International Fraternity of Wrestlers?
Well, we will do events as we see fit to be able to do two things. One is to honor somebody or something or an event within wrestling, and two is to be able to get some media coverage for it. One of the main things that wrestling has not been able to do is to break through into that general media and produce news stories that enlighten people that there's close to 700,000 kids that wrestle every year. I mean, that's a huge number, and yet we get so very little press coverage associated with that.
That's true. It's very true, and we bang the drum as loudly as we can weekly with Takedown Wrestling and our other programs for radio and television, but we can use all the help we can get, that's for sure. Coming up, the Gold Coast Hotel and Casino, September 11th. It'll be a very special evening. From 4 to 6 o'clock, we'll be presenting the 35th edition, the 35th anniversary of the 1980 Olympic team, the team that was boycotted. It's presented by Bosch Solutions. Our guest today has been one of the founders of the International Fraternity of Wrestlers, Chuck Harman. Chuck, it's always good to talk to you. We're looking forward to seeing you in Las Vegas. One more time, some of the benefits to to being a member, not just as an individual, but companies can be members too, right?
That's true. Scott, I'd like to just take a little U-turn here for a second. Do you have 30 seconds for a cute little story that Stan Desick told me about the 1980 team?
If it's a Stan Desick story, absolutely.
Well, Stan had told me that President Carter had been briefed on all the athletes, and during the briefing, uh, the briefer had told President Carter that Gene Mills had a mean half Nelson. And so the Olympic team got to meet President Carter. They went to the White House, and while they were on the front lawn of the White House, Gene was directly behind President Carter and asked if he could put his hand on President Carter's shoulder. And President Carter looked back at him right in the eyes and says, "As long as you don't throw that mean half Nelson, Gene, you can put your hand on my shoulder."
How surprised was Gene at that
Gene,
response?
Gene said he was shocked. How would he even know something like that, But it was one of those funny stories that Stan Desick remembers to this day about that team. And you'll hear, if you get the opportunity to come to this dinner, you'll hear those kinds of stories and the things that happened during that time frame.
We'll be there for sure, and I'm looking forward to it. It's always a neat opportunity to celebrate the great athletes, but this one particular special team. As a matter of fact, coming to these studios here within the next hour or so will be the great Lee Kemp, a three-time freestyle world champ, an NCAA champ in his own right, state champ in Ohio, and just an absolute monster on the mat when it came to wrestling. Man, technique, strength, endurance. Lee Kemp had it going on. A lot of people don't perhaps remember that he beat Dan Gable. I mean, Lee Kemp is one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. And Lee Kemp is a member of the 1980 Olympic wrestling team
How
and
about
didn't
that?
get a second chance.
Did not get a second chance. Chuck, I appreciate the opportunity. We still want to go through those benefits that members can receive upon joining the International Fraternity of Wrestlers. If you would, in brief, let them know what they can receive by being a member of the fraternity.
Well, the price of being an annual member is $49.95, and with that, you get a $25 restaurant card that can be used at 18,000 restaurants throughout the United States. That brings your cost down to $24.95. And with that, you get a challenge coin, a neat little coin that has Dan Gable's saying on the back of it and our logo on the front. And your membership card is actually a discount card that you can use on everyday purchases. And you'll find that you'll be able to get between 20 and 60% off on purchases like flowers and travel deals and so forth. So what we've done is we've leveraged what we perceive as being the membership number that we're going to be able to achieve, and we've leveraged that into the marketplace to bring deals to you. We're somewhat a cross between the PGA and, let's say, a AAA card.
So what's cool about this, by the way, is that this is a growing organization, and those benefits will only continue to grow, right?
We will continue to grow those. This is our first stab, and we came out with a pretty good product with 20 to 60% off some everyday items.
And one of the things I would encourage you folks to do, again, check out the website. You'll find a list of those folks that are a partial list anyway of the IFW Club Card partners, and it includes Macy's and Budget and Dollar Rental Cars and 1-800-Flowers, Cheapo Air, FedEx. There's so many good folks that are already involved. And again, you can be involved in a variety of different ways. For more information and the contact information, go to ifwrestlers.org. Connect with these folks. I guarantee you're going to have a good time rediscovering your wrestling history. How about that? So much we have not talked about in a while. Well, we can do it all together as members of the same fraternity. Chuck Harman has been our guest in the Nike Hot Seat today. Chuck, I hope the seat was comfortable.
It was comfortable, Scott.
Did okay? Chuck Harman, I appreciate the time. Fans, make sure you check it out online, ifwrestlers.org. We appreciate the opportunity and the time of Chuck Harman. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Scott.